A number came out in November 2025, 30,000 troops. That's America's total military presence in the Middle East. In 2021, it was 45,000. Now it's 30,000. Bases closing, troops withdrawing, and almost nobody noticed. For 75 years, American power in the Middle East rested on simple architecture: control the oil, maintain military dominance, keep allies dependent on American security guarantees, isolate adversaries through sanctions. The system worked through the Cold War, through the Gulf Wars, through every crisis and conflict. America was the indispensable power in the region. But something happened between 2023 and 2025 that shattered this architecture. Not one dramatic event, a series of moves that collectively represent the collapse of American regional dominance. Saudi Arabia and Iran restored diplomatic relations with Chinese mediation in March 2023. Saudi Arabia joined BRICS in 2024. Oil sales began settling in yuan. Regional states started ignoring American preferences on everything from Syria to Yemen to Gaza. The military footprint that enforced 75 years of dominance is shrinking rapidly. Here's the question that should terrify anyone who understands how American prosperity depends on Middle East stability. How did America lose control of the region that supplies 30% of global oil, that anchored dollar dominance for 50 years, that has been the centerpiece of US foreign policy for 3 generations? And more urgently, what happens when Iran, the adversary America spent 45 years trying to contain, makes a move that transforms American decline into genuine crisis? The move that changes everything. In October 2025, Iran announced something that should have made front-page news everywhere: formal economic integration with China worth $400 billion over 25 years. $400 billion, but it's not just the number, it's the structure that matters. China will invest $280 billion in Iranian energy infrastructure, oil fields, gas fields, refineries, petrochemical plants, pipelines. In exchange, China gets guaranteed oil and gas supplies at discounted prices for 25 years, roughly 1 million barrels of oil daily. At current prices, that's $29 billion annually in energy flowing from Iran to China. Here's what makes it strategic. All transactions settle in yuan: every barrel of oil, every cubic meter of gas, every infrastructure contract. Yuan, no dollars. Iran's central bank will hold yuan reserves. Chinese companies will dominate Iranian energy sector development. Iran just locked in $400 billion in Chinese investment and decades of Chinese partnership in a framework that completely bypasses American currency, American companies, American influence. But that's just the economic component. Iran simultaneously announced deeper military cooperation with Russia, joint naval exercises in the Indian Ocean, Russian weapons sales resuming, S-400 missile defense systems, advanced fighter aircraft, intelligence sharing, Russia providing satellite coverage of US military positions across the Middle East, and then the move that crosses into direct challenge. Iran announced expansion of its nuclear program, not weaponization explicitly, but uranium enrichment to 60% purity. That's just below weapons grade 90%. Breakout time to a nuclear weapon, the time needed to produce enough weapons-grade uranium for a bomb, now estimated at just weeks rather than months. Think about what this creates. Iran with Chinese economic partnership worth hundreds of billions, with Russian military backing, with nuclear capability approaching weapons grade, operating entirely outside American financial systems, ignoring American sanctions, pursuing regional ambitions without fear of American response. This is Iran uncontained, and American power in the Middle East can't survive Iran uncontained. Why now? The perfect storm. Iran didn't make this move randomly. The timing reveals how completely American power has slipped. First, America is distracted. Ukraine, China tensions, domestic political chaos. The Middle East isn't the priority anymore. Iran watched American attention drift and saw opportunity. Second, American allies in the region are hedging. Saudi Arabia restored relations with Iran. The UAE expanded trade with Iran. Even Israel, through back-channel communications, is less aggressive toward Iran than 5 years ago. Nobody believes American security guarantees are reliable anymore. Third, sanctions stopped working. Iran survived 45 years of American sanctions. They built alternative trade networks, oil smuggling through front companies, trade with China, Russia, Turkey in non-dollar currencies. The sanctions regime that was supposed to cripple Iran just made them expert at sanctions evasion. Fourth, energy markets shifted. Iran can sell oil to China and India without Western involvement. Chinese and Indian refineries buy Iranian crude at discount through intermediaries. Iran earned roughly $50 billion from oil exports in 2024 despite sanctions. $50 billion while supposedly cut off from global markets. Iran looked at these factors and concluded, American threats are empty, American allies are unreliable, American sanctions are survivable. This is the moment to break out completely. The cascading collapse. Here's what makes this a major crisis rather than just another Middle East problem. If Iran succeeds in breaking containment with Chinese backing, with Russian support, with nuclear capability, then the entire American position in the Middle East collapses. Not slowly, rapidly. Saudi Arabia watches Iran uncontained and thinks, America can't protect us anymore. We need to accommodate Iran or build our own deterrent. Either option means Saudi Arabia becomes less aligned with American interests. Israel watches Iran approaching nuclear capability with Chinese economic backing and Russian military support and thinks, America won't act. We're on our own. Either Israel acts militarily, risking regional war, or Israel accommodates to Iranian power. UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, all the Gulf states watch Iran rising and American power slipping and think, we're hedging. Deeper ties with China, better relations with Iran, less dependence on America. The American alliance system in the Middle East, built over 75 years, unravels. Not because America withdraws formally, but because regional partners conclude American power can't contain threats anymore. The economic devastation. Let me show you the economic consequences because they're devastating and most Americans don't understand how much prosperity depends on Middle East stability under American influence. The Middle East produces roughly 28 million barrels of oil daily, about 30% of global supply. For 50 years, that oil has been priced in dollars, traded on exchanges America influences, shipped through waterways America protects. This system generated enormous benefits for America: dollar demand from oil sales, low oil prices from stable production, allied relationships that supported American foreign policy. If Iran breaks containment and reshapes regional order, all these benefits disappear. First, oil pricing shifts away from dollars. If Iran sells to China in yuan and that partnership succeeds, other producers follow. Saudi Arabia already does some yuan sales. Russia sells in rubles. If Middle East oil shifts even 30% to non-dollar currencies, that's 8.4 million barrels at $80 per barrel. That's $672 million daily, $245 billion annually in oil sales not requiring dollars. Reduced dollar demand weakens the dollar. A 10-15% dollar decline makes American imports more expensive. America imports $3.2 trillion annually. Even a 10% currency decline means $320 billion in additional import costs. That's direct inflation hitting every American household. Second, oil price stability ends. American influence kept Gulf producers aligned on stable production, supporting moderate prices. If Iran, backed by China and Russia, pressures Gulf states, if regional conflict escalates, if alliance structures collapse, oil prices become volatile. Price spikes to $120 or $150 per barrel become more likely. American consumers pay $5, $6, maybe $7 per gallon for gasoline. Inflation surges. The Federal Reserve raises interest rates. Economic growth collapses. Third, petrodollar recycling stops. For 50 years, oil exporters earned dollars and bought U.S. Treasury bonds. This recycling kept U.S. interest rates low. If oil sales shift to yuan, if Gulf states hold more yuan reserves, demand for treasuries falls. Every 10% reduction in foreign treasury holdings means U.S. borrowing costs rise roughly 0.5 percentage points on $38 trillion in debt. That's $114 billion to $190 billion in additional annual interest costs. The budget that's already strained breaks completely. These aren't hypothetical future consequences. They're mechanisms already in motion. And Iran's move, breaking containment with $400 billion in Chinese backing, accelerates everything. Why America can't stop this? Here's the brutal truth. America has no good options. Military option? Iran has thousands of ballistic and cruise missiles. They can hit every U.S. base in the region, every oil facility in the Gulf, close the Strait of Hormuz through which 21 million barrels daily flow, 1/5 of global oil supply. A U.S. military strike on Iran would trigger regional war. Oil prices would spike to $150, maybe $200 per barrel. Global recession would follow. And Iran, with Chinese economic backing and Russian military support, could sustain a conflict longer than American political will would hold. The military option is catastrophic. Sanctions? Iran has survived 45 years of sanctions. They've built elaborate evasion networks. New sanctions wouldn't change anything. Iran is already maximally sanctioned. What's left? Sanctioning countries that trade with Iran. That means sanctioning China. Economic warfare with the world's second largest economy and America's third largest trading partner. Politically impossible, sanctions failed. The option is exhausted. Diplomacy? The US withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal in 2018. Trust is gone. Iran demands sanctions relief, security guarantees, regional influence. America won't offer those concessions. Iran won't accept less. Negotiations have no foundation. Neither side trusts the other. Neither side will compromise enough to reach agreement. Diplomacy is deadlocked. So America has no good options. Military action is too costly. Sanctions don't work. Diplomacy is stalled. And meanwhile, Iran is moving forward with Chinese backing, Russian support, nuclear advancement. This is what powerlessness looks like. Not dramatic defeat, just the slow realization that none of your tools work anymore. Why the world in 2030? Let me show you what the Middle East looks like in 2030 if this continues. Iran is economically integrated with China. $400 billion in Chinese investment has modernized the Iranian energy sector. Oil and gas production increased 40%. Iran exports 3 million barrels daily, mostly to China and India, all in yuan and rupees. Iran has nuclear weapons capability, not declared, not tested, but breakout time is measured in days. Everyone knows Iran could build a weapon quickly if threatened. This deters attack and gives Iran regional leverage. Saudi Arabia hedges between America and China. Oil sales split 40% to Asia in yuan, 40% to rest of world in dollars. The dollar's dominance in Middle East energy is broken. Chinese investment in NEOM and other projects exceeds $200 billion. The UAE is a Chinese financial hub. Yuan clearing, digital yuan usage. Trade between China and Middle East flows through UAE in yuan-denominated systems. American military presence is minimal, maybe 15,000 troops total, down from 30,000 in 2025. Regional states ignore American preferences on everything. This is multipolarity in practice. America is one power among several in the Middle East. Not dominant, not decisive, just another player. And the economic consequences for America are severe. The dollar's share of Middle East oil trade falls from 85% in 2020 to 50% by 2030. That's $300 billion annually in oil sales exiting the dollar system. Reduced dollar demand pushes dollar value down 15%. Import costs rise. Inflation persists at 4 to 5%. Foreign treasury holdings fall as petrodollar recycling declines. U.S. borrowing costs rise 1.5 percentage points on $50 trillion in debt by 2030. That's $750 billion annually in additional interest costs. Half of federal tax revenue goes to interest payments. No money for defense, infrastructure, social programs. American living standards decline, not collapse, just slow erosion. This is the future Iran's move is creating. The keystone breaks. Here's what keeps strategists awake at night. American global power for 75 years rested on controlling the Middle East. Oil, dollars, alliances, bases. The region was the keystone. If you lose the Middle East, you lose dollar dominance. You lose cheap energy. You lose the ability to project power globally. Everything cascades from that loss. And Iran, with a single strategic move backed by China's $400 billion, just broke the keystone. The American position in the Middle East is slipping, not slowly, rapidly. Allies hedging, adversaries emboldened, economic ties shifting east, military presence shrinking. And Iran's sudden move, formal integration with China, Russian military cooperation, nuclear advancement, didn't just exploit that slippage. It turned slippage into crisis. It accelerated collapse. The 75-year American era in the Middle East is ending. Not through dramatic defeat, through the slow realization among regional players that American power can't contain threats, can't enforce order, can't protect allies anymore. Iran proved it with Chinese money, with Russian support, with nuclear advancement, and every nation in the region watched and learned. American dominance is over. The crisis is just beginning.